I think I should be on now. I think I should be live. I was just talking and it wasn't showing up in the stream. It wasn't showing up. Right. Pull this up here. Do wish there was a way to hide the screen here without jumping into the show. Whatever. We're going to have to probably jump in. Oh, my microphone says that it's arriving today. That's good. 4 stops away. Damn. Let's close some of these tabs up. Save and shut down Photoshop. All right, I think we're just going to kind of get into this. I didn't adjust my camera before the show. I should have. There we go. All right, let's cut the music. Producer Adam, cut the music. We've got a couple things we're going to be talking about today on the stream. We've got a Jordan jersey that's sold for $10 million. Jordan jersey. We've got the Arizona Fall League rosters, and then a Call of Duty legend retires. Let's see. What else do we need to shut down here? So this can go. We're sponsored sort of by PrizePicks. I don't know exactly how to word it, but like I said, use the link I just put in the comments to check out PrizePicks. Let's. All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about 3 different topics. We've got the Jordan jersey that sold through Sotheby's for $10 million. We have the Arizona Fall League rosters being announced. And we also have a Call of Duty legend retiring. We're going to get into those 3 topics. First, we have the Jordan sale. I think this makes this jersey, which was from The Last Dance, so the jersey from The Last Dance, sells for $10 million. It makes it the most expensive sports memorabilia piece kind of in history. I think this sort of is telling for a couple different things. I think it's more or less changing what people think of as art. Like, I think, yes, so obviously it's a jersey, but I think if you look at this jersey, it's basically a piece of art. And I think, for decades, people have looked at art as the only real, display piece that you could put. I don't know, $10 million. I'm not 100% sure who the buyer was or what they're going to do with the jersey. But I think if you look at that and you say, if you look at this, look at the jersey, it's just going to be it's going to be probably on display like it would a piece of art. I think that there probably will end up being more sports museums. This is maybe another sort of random, I don't even think it's a hot take necessarily, but something that I think is kind of interesting is I think what's going to happen is that there's going to become more museums. And actually, there's going to be more museums that are related to sports and sports memorabilia. So let me just move this down. What I think is happening is we're going to see more sports related museums. It's kind of interesting. I'm surprised that the NBA wouldn't be involved in buying something like this because, like, why wouldn't you want to put this jersey in the Hall of Fame? Maybe it's somebody that bought it and they're going to display it in the Hall of Fame. They're going to put it in the Hall of Fame. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen with this jersey or who's going to display it. But I think what you're seeing is that, like, sports related things, it may even be like a generational type of situation where sports related items are becoming more and more collectible the same way that art was becoming collectible. Like, I think maybe you look at the last generation and they liked art, or maybe it could just be like it's a status symbol. But I think the status symbol has sort of shifted from art. I think even Jay-Z has referenced, like, he bought like a $10 million painting or something, or a Basquiat, and then he is going to give that to his kid or something along those. I don't remember the exact lyrics, but, like, I think you look at that situation and you look at this and it's honestly very similar. And I don't know if necessarily sports cards are going to get into that conversation. I think it's going to be hard to display cards. That's sort of how I think. I think it looks good. It's hard to display cards in a way that really show off sort of the value that they have. I think you can easily point to this jersey if you're putting it on display, and you can easily point to it and say, like, this is the jersey that was worn by Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals, which also had to do with the Last Dance. I think it's harder probably to look at a card, because I think people understand that cards have value now, rather or more probably than they had in the past. But I think sort of explaining why a card has value is definitely not as easy as, like, something like this. And you know, I'm not somebody who has $10 million to spend on a jersey like this or spend on anything. But I think what what it probably is going to do is that some of this money could shift into cards. I do think that there's going to have to be maybe some sort of company that is able to that has a better way of displaying cards as, like, art versus um this jersey. It's going to be very easy to display. I mean, it's a jersey that, Jordan is 6'6" or whatever. I don't know his exact height, but, like, the jersey is a pretty big. You can easily put it in a frame, or I don't know if it comes with this display that they have in this image. But I think what that person probably can do is they can put it on display somewhere, I don't know, in their house, or if it's going to a museum, it probably gets displayed that way. With cards, it's like, it's hard to display something that's only trying to get it. That's, like, only not really that big. I think, I don't know if it's going to be like, there's a rainbow, because you collecting the rainbow, the numbered parallels. If you collect all the parallels, you're collecting the rainbow. Maybe it's like putting all those on a display. But it's like, if you're looking at, for example, I don't know, the Steph Curry one of one national treasures. Somebody, I think it was Alt, which was like the co-founder of Reddit. I'm pretty sure he bought that card as like a joint kind of operation. So it's definitely harder to look at a card like that. I forget the exact value. I think it was in the $6 million range, if I'm not mistaken. But like, it's going to be definitely a lot harder to look at that card and trying to explain why it has value and like why it cost what it did. Essentially, same with the Mike Trout 1/1 Superfractor. I think everybody, you can look at it and say, well, it's it's, and maybe it even could be like a conversation piece, and that's sort of what cards end up being if they get put on display somewhere. In I don't know. Art, I think, is obviously much easier to display than sports cards because it's just a lot larger. But I think with this jersey, you're clearly showing that real money is being put into these sports collectibles versus art. And that's not to say that there isn't art that's also selling for this much. And also, there are tons of different documentaries you can watch about how a lot of the activity that goes on in the art industry is a little bit fraudulent. I think, unfortunately, there is a little bit that comes into that when it comes to like sports cards and memorabilia. There is a little bit of fraudulence that goes on. And I don't know if fraudulence is a word, but there is a little bit of fraudulent activity that goes on within sports cards, whether it's shill bidding, whether it's trimming, whether it's, and you can name tons of different things. And it's very similar to art, where art, people look at it and say it's more, people are storing the art. I think the thing about art that people talk about is that that it's sort of like a rigged system, because it's like the rich people buy the art, or they buy the piece of art, and then they just bring it to an appraiser, and the appraiser says that it's worth, I don't know, if they bought it for what, $10 million, the appraiser goes, no, this is worth $20 million, and then it's worth $20 million. It's like, it's obviously it's what someone is willing to pay for that piece of art. So it's not technically worth $20 million until someone pays $20 million for it. But I think what that ends up doing is that it ends up becoming part of an asset. And when it comes to like taxes and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure there's some sort of implication there with how that exactly works. Or I think, the other scenario that I've heard when you look into kind of the art world is like, people will, they'll buy it for $10 million. The art person will say, or the appraiser will say it's worth $20 million, and then they donate it to a museum, and the $10 million, they get a tax break on it because they donated something that's worth $20 million, or whatever, whatever the scenario is. I don't know if that's going to happen within sports collectibles and sports cards, but I don't necessarily think it's out of the realm of possibility that something like that could happen within our industry. But I think with this $10 million sale, like I said before, it's showing that I think people are willing to spend real millions and millions of dollars on these collectibles, where if it's just a piece of art, it's maybe it's even as confusing. Like, it's this artist, and you have to explain why this piece of art versus, if you have a sports card on display, you have to explain what National Treasures is, or you have to explain what Bowman Chrome, or why it's a 1/1, or the Superfractor, or why, if Mike Trout's a rookie in 2011, why is a card from 2009 considered his best card? It's all in that conversation, but I think it definitely puts a good kind of spin on where people are putting their money and what kind of collectibles and things people are buying. And if they're shifting over from traditional art to kind of like this jersey, for example, or like the Maradona jersey that sold, I believe, for $8.4 million, like, people are putting real money into this, which I think does trickle down at least a little bit into the sports card industry, just because of the seriousness that I think, $10 million isn't just like something small. It's a big deal, I think. So I think that seriousness that comes with someone spending $10 million on something does trickle down a little bit into sports cards. Maybe not like a huge amount, but I think it is going to help the industry a little bit. All right. That's all for that one topic. I'm going to have to cut that up a little bit because I did have to adjust the camera a little bit there. All right, let's get into Prize Picks. So Prize Picks is daily fantasy and props, player props, basically put into one. It's, you can put a bunch of different lineups. You can do MLB, you can do NHL or basketball once that's back. I did a lineup or two lineups last week that I talked about on the show. Went 1-1 on the two lineups, but went 5-6 on the picks. The only pick that I didn't get was an interception from Marcus Mariota, which was unfortunate. But that interception prop is one that I'm going back to this week with Baker, Trubisky, Tua. Hopefully each of them throw an interception. That would be good for me, obviously. And then I did yards for receivers rather than yards for quarterbacks. Last week there was a player prop that was a special for week 1 where Brady had to only throw for, I think it was like 0.5 yards, which basically was like, it's a free square. I believe that's what they call it. So the one thing about Prize Picks that's really great is that it's daily fantasy. If you don't like your fantasy lineup, you can go in and make lineups here. There's two different types of plays you can do. You can do a flex play or a power play. So the power play, you have to get all of them correct, but it's a higher payout than the flex play, where if you get one wrong or you get two wrong, depending on how many picks you put in, you still can cash out on those picks. But if you get 3 right and you go 3 for 3 or you go 4 for 4 or whatever your pick ends up being, that payout is going to be a little bit different. It's almost like pick insurance in a way. I think I've heard people call something similar to that with other daily fantasy stuff. You can get one of the picks wrong and still win your pick with the flex play. So check out the link that I put in the description and the link that I put in the comments of this video. You can get a 100% deposit bonus up to $100 if you use the link that I put in there. And if you do that, you're going to help out the show. So I greatly appreciate it. Let's move on to the next topic here. So we got the Arizona Fall League. Arizona Fall League is one of the winter baseball leagues that happens after the minor league season. You've seen a lot of big names coming out of that league. Like I think in 2018, there was Pete Alonso had like a huge season, and you look at some of the names of the players on the roster. I was a little bit surprised here because it said only 16 of the top 100 prospects are going to be playing in this. Now, for the top 20, I'm going to get into the roster itself. For the top 20 is a little bit deceptive of a stat because it's like 6, 13, 18, and 20. Unfortunately, none of the top 5 prospects are going to be playing in this. I think this may not include the players that were on the last, that were just drafted. So they may not be ranked. So there's a chance that if the rankings change, that there's going to be more players that are included on those rosters, or if there's any changes that also could take an effect. I mean, obviously the big name here, we had number 44. We got Jason Dominguez. He's going to be playing. Just looking down this list, I mean, Henry Davis, who I believe was the first round or the first overall pick, not this last draft, but the previous draft for the Pirates, he's going to be there. That's a big name. Let's see, Jordan Lawler for the D-backs. He was kind of one of the big players that was coming out of 2021 Bowman, I believe, or 2022. I forget off the top of my head, but he was one of the big names coming out of a recent Bowman product, kind of one of the big prospects. Jordan Walker for the Cardinals, obviously going to be another big name. For the most part, I'd say that people probably Brennan Davis is another kind of prospect that has sort of been in the Cubs system for a little bit, has been a name that people are excited about in sports cards, hasn't really gotten the call up to the majors yet, so we're still sort of waiting. Dominguez, he was in 2020 Bowman, he had a very sort of interesting Bowman experience when he first started coming out of products, because that 2020 season, he was the big name that was going to be in Bowman, but like that was obviously when sort of the season was shutting down, because obviously 2020 and the pandemic and everything, super, super wild stuff there. But like he was coming out of 2020 Bowman, and that was actually the first year that they had the first editions for Bowman Chrome. So Bowman Chrome first edition came out before the regular Bowman Chrome came out. I don't think there was delayed, but it came out after first edition. And there was some speculation that actually the Bowman first edition, the Chrome autographs, a lot of them were smudged. And this could obviously be cherry picking, because I think people are only going to post the autographs that are smudged. They're not going to be like, hey, my autograph wasn't smudged or whatever. But it was kind of interesting because there were like numbered autographs that were coming out of first edition that are like there's a hundred, like I think there was a couple greens that were like there was 100 of them. So like they had 100 green autographs that were coming out of that first edition. So I think one of the interesting things with Jason Dominguez and with that 2020 Bowman first edition kind of crowd is that like it sort of changes the landscape of that Bowman product, I think, a little bit. And it may not change it right away, but I think down the road, maybe once Jason Dominguez kind of comes up, and especially playing for the Yankees, I think he didn't play as well in his first season, which I would just honestly chalk that up to like 2020. I think anybody who kind of played poorly in that 2020 season going, it was just a weird year. Like I think, and especially because the minor leagues were just canceled altogether. Like they didn't even have any season at all. So like a lot of prospects missed a whole season's worth of, rookie ball or AAA or AA or single A or wherever they would have fallen in that category. But so once Jason Dominguez kind of gets the call up, I think it's going to be very interesting to see sort of what people think is like the first Bowman that people want. Like, I think it's obviously, if I'm ranking them, the first Bowman Chrome card is going to be number one, but then the paper and then the paper and then the first edition paper, I think are going to be in the conversation they're going to be closer in price than maybe people think. And it's unfortunate because it does switch the landscape sort of that first Bowman card, because like, who knows how many of those first Bowman first edition cards there are paper, because the Chromes were only autographs. They didn't have a Bowman Chrome first edition. It was just Bowman paper first edition. And that was in a totally different product as well. I think you could buy packs or you could buy them in boxes. And it actually, when it first came out, I think the Topps website crashed, I believe. And that was like so long ago, honestly. It was like 2 years ago at this point, but it's wild. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen with those first edition cards. Like, is that going to be the card that people look at and they say, this is the one that I do want, versus the regular Bowman paper, which people, I think you could probably buy Jason Dominguez Bowman paper cards for like $5. I haven't looked up the exact price, but like even the Bowman Chrome card, to be honest, like Dominguez didn't have the best season. He has had a better season this past year. He was in the futures game that happened over All-Star weekend. I think he hit a home run, and that's how the team won, based off of the home run that he hit. But then you have like I said, Brennan Davis. I think he was in 2019 Bowman. But here's kind of the thing. It's a little bit interesting to me, like prospects and how prospecting goes within sports cards. And Josh from Cardboard Chronicles, who is from Card Ladder, I think I want to talk about this soon as well. He put out a video. Well, he put out on Instagram story, and it was a bunch of Instagram story slides, basically. And it was football, it wasn't baseball, but I think the comparison there ends up working out, where he was comparing the top players from the past two drafts, comparing them to players who are in the league now. And the prices they're way different. Like, I think he was comparing Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. And if you look at like Joe Burrow's National Treasures versus Matthew Stafford's National Treasures, or any of the base cards, like there's such a huge difference that I wonder what's going to happen if those players, like if a Joe Burrow, like if Joe Burrow, for example, doesn't pan out, and even if he does, like even if he becomes Matthew Stafford, like Matthew Stafford, I think since he won the Super Bowl, I think he's a Hall of Famer now, to be completely honest. Like, I think before it was probably arguable if he was going to make the Hall of Fame or not. But like so now I think that he's won that Super Bowl, he is going to be a Hall of Famer. But like his card price floor is so much lower than Joe Burrow. Like, I have a lot of thoughts on this kind of in general. Like, is the floor of modern sports cards, like of the modern sets, like certain modern sets, I don't think necessarily like base cards or anything along those lines, but like certain modern sets like National Treasures, or, even Flawless or Immaculate for football, like are those prices are they just higher? Like, are they going to be higher for quarterbacks to get into those types of cards versus, a Matthew Stafford? I think, I forget who was talking about it, but I know someone was talking about like Bo Jackson recently and saying like, Bo Jackson, his card values can't really go up as much as someone like that's in the league now. And I don't know if there's necessarily a good comparison for Bo Jackson, kind of one of the craziest players of all time, to be honest. But like his card prices they probably won't go down significantly, but they'll probably stay pretty steady. We had seen, some players, I think after this last kind of drop in a lot of the markets, we're seeing sort of a lot of players sort of stay flat. But overall, I think if you're comparing players who are rookies or prospects that are coming up compared to these players who are established in the league now, you are definitely seeing like a wide gap. But I wonder if that floor is just what the floor is now for these players, or if the floor is honestly, if it's going to get down to like where those Stafford, like if if whatever sixth grade quarterback, when he becomes, the Joe Burrow, the number one overall pick, like, are we going to be comparing his cards to Joe Burrow and saying like, if does the Joe Burrow card drop to the Matthew Stafford price? Or are we going to just be looking at like Joe Burrow staying steady if he kind of goes on to have a good career, obviously, but like then comparing him to whoever the next prospect is, like, is that prospect's cards going to be that much significantly higher than the Joe Burrow? And I think when it comes to like baseball, it's almost exactly the same. Like you could compare Jason Dominguez prices to like, Bobby Witt or Mookie Betts or any of these players who are in the league. And Bobby Witt's an example of sort of similar to Jason Dominguez, but like in the league now, obviously. But like if you're comparing Jason Dominguez, even to a player like Albert Pujols, like you could find cards that are very similarly priced. And if you were to find a card that is sort of in the same realm of conversation of like, this is the card that you want for this player, I'm sure the prices are either close to the same or Jason Dominguez might even be a little bit higher, to be honest. So it's like the prospecting conversation, I think, is a very interesting one, and one that I follow a lot of because I also feel I feel not necessarily responsible, but it's like I love talking about prospects, to be honest. Like they're very interesting to watch. So it's like, is the conversation around prospects the reason why those card prices are so high, or is it the reverse? Like, are the card prices high because the prospect has a lot of potential? I think it's sort of a combination of both. Like, because like I said, prospects are they're interesting to talk about, and it's fun to kind of be excited for a player to come up into the league and kind of show their potential. But then like once that happens, people then just kind of move on to the next prospect. So does that happen to a player like Jason Dominguez once he gets in the league, like, or Bobby Witt, like once he plays another couple seasons, like, or, Julio Rodriguez is another kind of example of a rookie. But like, I wonder what's going to be the floor for some of these players? Like, is a Jason Dominguez versus a Mookie Betts, like, is the floor of the Jason Dominguez just going to be higher throughout his career compared to the Mookie Betts? Or is the Mookie Betts still like undervalued? Like that's kind of one of the other things years ago, Mookie Betts was extremely undervalued. Now I think he's properly valued as in terms of in the sports card world, but he's like one of the best players in the league, if not number two, or if not more popular than or a better player than Mike Trout, to be completely honest. But like the prospecting conversation, it's never ending because there's always a new prospect that's going to come up. And it's something I'll talk about on the show and in videos, but it's always something where I want people to make sure they're doing the research for themselves and determining whether these prices are worth it. In most cases, I would say probably not. But at the same time, like, who's to say what the floor is going to be in 10 years for some of these prospects, to be honest. All right. And then the last topic we have, the microphone. Oh, it says it's one stop away. It's crazy. Last topic is going to be something Call of Duty related. So Crimsix, one of the best Call of Duty players of all time, has announced he's going to be retiring. He is going to have a card in the Call of Duty product that's coming out in December, which will have him on the Dallas Empire, which was the Dallas team for NRG in the Cold War season. And like I've said in multiple videos, if you're a sports card person and you're not into esports, none of this is going to make any sense. But I'm going to try and explain it kind of as well as I can for maybe people who are sort of trying to get into it. So like Crimsix he has the most championships. He has, I think he's either tied or he has the most world championships, which at the end of each season, it's like the NBA finals or something along those lines as well. So Crimsix, he has the most championships sort of across the board. There's another player, Scump, who people argue who's the best player of all time. I think Crimsix is always going to be in that conversation. I don't know. It's like if it's sort of like a LeBron Steph Curry conversation, to be completely honest, like in terms of who people say is the best. Like people say that Scump is the best Call of Duty player. He plays for Optic and he's played for Optic basically his whole career. But then people also look at a player like Crimsix, who is maybe, and the comparison of player wise maybe isn't exactly there, but like the Crimsix is always in that conversation for best player. And he probably always will, to be completely honest, and maybe even best esports player, which kind of that's almost like a Jordan, Tom Brady type of situation where who's the best player in sports of all time? Wayne Gretzky, maybe another example. But like I said, I'm going to try and explain it as well as I can. So Crimsix is going to have a card, which was probably actually, I think it's his first card, which is unfortunate that they couldn't come out with this product earlier. Like I wish that they had figured out the CDL Call of Duty Professional League. I wish they had figured out a way to get these, because Cold War, I think Modern Warfare and then Cold War and then Vanguard and then Modern Warfare 2 are kind of the four games that have happened in this franchise league essentially. And so Crimsix played for the Dallas Empire, which is NRG, the NRG team, which is another esports organization. The previous year, or the year after NRG won, they merged with Optic, which is, like I said, it's kind of confusing. And so then this year, Crimsix played for New York, and New York was about to not make the World Championship because there's 12 teams in the league. 8 teams make the World Championship, and he made it to the finals of the last event, which essentially qualified them for the World Championship. So his last year is probably going to be pretty insane to look back at and say, like, wow, it's really crazy that he was able to do this. But his card, he's going to be on the Dallas Empire. So I don't know what they're going to do with the Vanguard season, if they're going to come out with another product, a year from now or 6 months from now, or how they're going to do it, because they're 2 games behind on these cards. And I'm really excited for the cards to come out, but like this to be his first card, it's sort of unfortunate, to be completely honest, because he's played in the league and he's played Call of Duty for, 10, almost 15 years at this point. And he is like one of the most popular, one of the most decorated Call of Duty players of all time. And he's only really going to have like this card and then whatever they do for Vanguard. Those will be the only 2 cards really that he's going to have, unfortunately. And I think Upper Deck has done a good job this year. They came out with they did like the Tops Now type cards for moments, but they only really came out with like a couple cards throughout the entire year. I think it was only like 1 or 2 per week. So like I don't even think Crimsix was in that list of cards that came out. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see sort of what these cards, how they end up coming out. I mean, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, if Upper Deck is listening to this and they want to send me a box of the Call of Duty cards, that would be great, because I'm probably going to buy a box myself, and maybe I just shot myself in the foot by saying I was going to buy a box and then they're not going to send me one. But either way, I'm excited for the product to come out. It's going to be like Crimsix. That'll be his first card, technically his rookie card, which is kind of crazy. It's like if NBA, there was never any NBA products, and then the NBA came out with a product this year, and it had the 2020 Lakers players in it. So like if LeBron basically got his first card on the Lakers this year, but the product came out and it's from 2 years ago. I don't know. It's a wild sort of system, and I'm hoping maybe in the future they're able to figure out how to come out with the esports cards a little bit better, because I think it's definitely an interesting category that could bring people in. Because if you look at esports in general, there's so much collectability within esports, like, and it's, in a way, it's kind of like NFTs where, and I know people in the sports cards hate when you compare NFTs and sports cards, but people within the games, they can buy stuff, which games eventually I think will come out when they'll be more like NFTs, like the skins or the gun camo, stuff along those lines. but so it's going to be like these cards, unfortunately, Crimsix's first card is going to come out after he retires, which is kind of wild and unfortunate. But at the same time, like it's good that they are finally getting into this, and maybe it is something where down the road they come out with another product. Maybe they are prepping this Vanguard product, which was last season's product, that's going to come out around the World Championships of last year or of this next season. But like I don't know, I just wish that they would figure out they do need to figure out a way to get caught up on the seasons and the games and figure out a way to get the cards. Like, again, I've talked about this in previous videos. They need to start coming out with products around the biggest event of the year, which would be the World Championship. So like if they came out with a Modern Warfare 2 product around the World Championship for this year, I don't know what they're going to do for Vanguard, because like I said, Cold War was 2 years ago, and that's when they're coming out with these cards for Upper Deck. I'm hoping maybe they come out with another product. Maybe they look at it and say they're not going to come out with a base product. Maybe they come out with some other sort of thing. I don't know what they're going to do for sure, but I think they do need to get caught up on the season, so that way when they're releasing the product, it is the players from this last year, not the players from 2 years ago. All right. And that's all I've got for today's show. I hope everyone enjoyed. Like I said, make sure you check the comments for prize picks. Got 2 lineups again today. That's all I've got for for week 2, depending on when you're listening to this. But either way, so thank you all for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review if you're listening on iTunes. Thank you all. I'll see you in the next one.